Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is YOMA and Beis. We begin 10 lines from the top of the Amud. Says the Gemara, Amar B'Yitzchak, Shtei Shchitei Shemati. I heard a halacha regarding two types of shchita. Achas shal para, one regarding the shchita of the para aduma, v'achas shal para, one in relation to the shchita of his par. What's his par? The par that belongs to the Kohen Gadol, the par on Yom Kippur. So I heard a halacha regarding both shchitas. Achas ksheira b'zar, one of them can be performed by a zar. V'achas psula b'zar, whereas the other one cannot be done through a zar. But I'm unsure which one is what. This is a continuation of the previous sugya where Rabbi Yitzchak presented two ribbons, Shtei L'Shonei Shemati, one regarding the para, one regarding the sar. One needs a shear, the other one not. I'm not unsure which one is what. So there's a fitting hemshech to the previous sugya. Once again, Rabbi Yitzchak presents two types of shchitas. One can be performed by a zar, the other one not. I'm unsure which one is which. Now, what does the word zar mean? Says the Tosfos Yishanim. Zar actually means a foreigner. So it's relative to the requirement, relative to the context. Meaning, Tosfos Yishanim says, for instance, on Yom Kippur, where the avodah must be done by a Kohen Gadol, the word zar here means a non-Kohen Gadol. Not only a Yisrael is considered a zar, but anybody who's unsuitable for this avodah, even a Kohen Hedid, is considered a zar in this context. So once again, Rabbi Yitzchak is unsure which one of these two can be done by a zar, which one of these two shchitas cannot be done by a zar. Says the Gemara, it's actually machlikas. Itmar, shchitas para upara, regarding the shchita or the para aduma, and regarding the shchita of the par Kohen Gadol, can it be done through a zar or not? Machlikas between Rav and Shmuel. Chad Omar, there's a difference between para, where it's psula if done by a zar, whereas paroi, the par Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, ksheira, a zar can do that shchita. V'chad Amar, and the other one said just the opposite. Paroi psula, the shchita of the par Kohen Gadol by a zar is possible. Para, as opposed to the para duma, over there the shchita through a zar is ksheira. So one holds para duma needs a kohen, whereas the par Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur does not need to be done by the Kohen Gadol. A zar is kasha, whereas the other shita says the other way around. The par aduma doesn't need a kohen. Par Kohen Gadol, that requires a Kohen Gadol even for the shchita. So it's a machlokes Rav and Shmuel, but we're unsure at this point who said what, which shita holds what. This time, says the Gemara, you can conclude that actually it's the Rav who the Amar para psula. Rav maintains shchitas para duma must be done by a kohen. How do we know? The Amar Bezerah, there's a girsa, and there goes a gra. Amar Rav. Zera quotes Rav as saying shchitas para bezar psula. Indeed, para duma needs a kohen. If it's done through a zar, it's possible. What's the reason? The Amar Rav Allah. Rav applied the following pasuk as a source for the kohen requirement by shchitas para duma. Elazar v'chuka shaninaba. We find throughout the Parsha Paraduma, the lashon Elazar, a kohen, he's meant to do the entire procedure, and specifically by the shchita. We have a pasuk which says, "You give over the para to Elazar a kohen, v'shachat oisal afanav," which indicates that he does the shchita, and we find chuka, zois chuka satorah, mentioned in that parsha, which indicates absoluteness. You can't go ahead and deviate. It has to be done by the kohen. So that's the source of Rav, who holds that shchitas paraduma must be done by a kohen. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, then why are you differentiating between paraduma and par Kohen Gadol? For Rav Maishna, para dichsiv Elazar v'chuka. Why is par unique? In a sense, because it has the Elazar v'chuka. Para nami, par Kohen Gadol as well. Haksiv Aaron v'chuka. Look at the parsha Zachri Moitz. Throughout the parsha we find the reference to Aaron, who's the only one enabled to do the Avodah Yom Kippur. And we find the lashon of chukas olam, denoting absoluteness. Unyielding, you can't go ahead and deviate from the Kohen Gadol. He must do everything, including the shechita. Shechita is different. Unlike Kabbalas Hadam, Haylach Hazrika, they're part of the Akrovas HaKorban process. Shechita, that's not really considered an avodah. What does this mean? Tosfos provides several pshatim. One, he says, well, think of it this way. Shechita applies to even to a non-kachim animal, even to chulin. You have to shecht an animal before you eat it. Shecht a chicken before you eat it. It's not uniquely carbon related. Therefore, it's called shechita la avodah, and it's different than the other avodas. Another pshat, he says, even an isha, an eved, a tamid, those that are not really right to perform avodas hakarbanos, they can do shechita. We learn this in Masechas Zvachim. So once again, we see that shechita is not on the same level as other avodas. Or he says, the sheichet of a carbon doesn't have to be in the right location, in the tzafon of the azara. In fact, you could do shechita standing outside the azara and holding a long knife, doing the shechita in the azara that way. You don't have to actually stand in the azara. In any case, whatever it is, shechita is different than other avodas and other akrovos. And therefore the Gemara says, that's a pshat. Why Rav maintains that although throughout Yom Kippur, Kohen Gadol is the only one roi for avodah, that only applies to true avodas, to akrovos. But shechita, it's in a class on its own, and a Kohen Gadol is not required. Let's take a look at Rashi. You'll find the Rashi around 19-20 lines from the top of the Amud, beginning with the words Elazar v'chuk. So this was the makar why paraduma needs to be done through a kohen. Elazar ksivba v'nesata ma'is Elazar uksiv zois chukas ha'toira v'choleheicha d'chsiv chukay kuhu. Chukah denotes absoluteness. You can't deviate. So that's why the shechita has to be done through the kohen. Or Yom Kippur as well. Aaron v'chukah. D'chsiv yikur v'Aaron es ha'par chatas shaloi v'chir v'adoi v'shachad es par chatas shaloi uksiv v'achimais binyana v'hoi sazos lachem l'chukas oilam l'chafra b'nei Yisrael. See, we have the Torah telling you that Aaron must do the shechita, and we have the lashon l'chukas oilam. You can't deviate from that. Continues Rashi, shechita l'avodahi, it's different. It's not an avodah v'lo yikayim chukah shechita. Although we have chukah describing the avodas, you have to follow this order, conform to this system. But shechita is not avodah, and therefore chukah is not applied to the shechita aspect of avodas Yom Kippur. Continues the Gemara, right off to the left. Iyachi paranami. Well, if shechita is not an avodah, then why is it that you insist that shechita's paraduma must be performed by the kohen? It's not an avodah. Shani para. The kacha bedek habayisi. Para is very different than your ordinary carbon. Para doesn't have kedushas haguf. It's not intended for the mizbeach. Remember, the para is brought outside the Beis Hamikdash. You do the shechita over on Har Zeisim. It's only bedek habayis. The whole has only a monetary kedusha to it. And therefore, what? How does that answer the question? Why would you be machmer then and say shechita must be done through a kohen? Let's go over to Rashi again, off to the right. Shani para de koche bedek habayis koloimar. So they always say koloimar is going to answer a question, meaning just because it's bedek habayis and it's actually lower in madrega, it requires more. Says Rashi koloimar imbo kedushas hamizbeach. It doesn't have that higher value. It doesn't have kedushas hamizbeach. Ela kedushas damim ba'alma. What's the raya? Shavish chitasa baramishcha. Here, look what says Rashi. I'll explain to you the pshat in the Gemara. Ein sad avodos nechlokes ba. Once it's a non-carbon entity, and there's no basis for drawing lines between the various aspects of the avodos. V'chol ha'avodos shaves ba, and they're all equal and the same. Meaning, when we're dealing with a true carbon, a kedushas haguf brought on the mizbeach, then there's room to be machalak and say, well, there are different levels of avodah. There is the actual hakrava, the kabbalas adam, this is rika, which involve the hakravas hakorban on the mizbeach. That's considered a higher level avodah. It's an avodas hakrava. It relates to the mizbeach, as opposed to shchita, which we find all over the place. We find it by chulin, as I just explained. That's not called avodas hakrava, and therefore even a zor can do it. We don't insist on a kohen, even on Yom Kippur. So due to the fact that it's actually higher in madrega, it's a higher class of a korban, there's room to be mechalek and say, well, the kohen requirement over here only pertains to that krova aspect of the korban, but not simply to the shchita, which is not on the same level. It's not an akrova element, as opposed to para aduma, being that it's not a kedushas mizbeach. It's not a korban going on the mizbeach. It's merely kachabedek habayis. The Torah says, well, a kohen has to be involved in the procedure all throughout, from beginning to end. There's no room to be machalik between this or that. All the aspects of this procedure are equal and the same. They're equal in value. There's no basis of distinction. No, you have no grounds to be machalik between shchita, which is a non-hakrav activity, and the rest of the paraduma procedure. We're not dealing with the korban to begin with. And when the Torah tells you a kohen has to do it, Torah meant from beginning to end. Continues the Gemara. For 1 second. Okay, you've given a good explanation why you cannot be machalak between this and that, but at the end of the day, isn't it a kavachayim? Isn't it a kol shekain? Isn't it illogical to say that by the par kohen gadol, which is kedushas mizbeach, kedushas haguf, you say, well, shchita can be done by anybody. And when it comes to the par aduma, which is lower in level, lower in value, lower in kedusha, you insist on a kohen doing the shchita? It's illogical. Rav Shisha, Beidar Vidi, yeah. Midi dahava, amaras negoyim. I'll give you a precedent. Amaras negoyim. Who wants to take a look at the nega? A kohen. Torah insists on only a kohen observing the nega and issuing the verdict, whether it's tamei tar. Let me ask you a question. Is that a krava? Is that a korban? Is that kedushas haguf? No. The love avodahi, ubaya kahuna. Despite the fact that it's not an avodah related activity, you need a kohen. A kohen is not only for the sake of avodah of hakrava. He's an individual who's considered part of Hashem's legion, and he was entrusted with certain tasks. He was given certain roles to fill. Sure, he does hakrava in the Beis Hamikdash, but there's other things as well. Pidin haben and maris negoyim, eats truma. The paraduma. True, it's not a hakrava. It's a procedure that has to be done through a kohen, just like maris negoyim. In which case, you have no basis for distinction between this part of the procedure and the other. The Torah says a kohen must do the paraduma. Torah meant from the beginning to the end. Let's go over to Rashi again. Off to the right, around 1 or 2 lines down. V'loi kol decheinu b'etzmiya. This is a kash. Ashchitas paroi dektushas hagufi. Lo ksiva chuka. You mean to say when it comes to the shchita of the par kohen gadol on Yom Kippur, which is kedushas haguf, kedushas mizbeach, the term chuka, which denotes absoluteness, does not apply to shchita. V'ashchitas paroi ksiva chuka umifz la bezar. But on the paraduma, which is a lower level kedusha, over there you'll tell me the chukah term mentioned in the Pasha Paraduma does apply to shchita? It's hard to believe. How do you explain such a thing? Answers the Gemara. Rashi continues, Amaris Negoyim v'chsiv v'huva al arna koyin. It's a procedure. Yeah. Doesn't mean that it stands higher than Par Yom Kippur. Of course it's lower. But it's a procedure, like any other procedure, for which the Torah requires a kohen, and only a kohen. Continues the Gemara. Let's summarize. Rav holds the shechita of paraduma must be done by a kohen, although it's by the kabayis, but it's a procedure that requires a kohen. Whereas the par kohen gadol on Yom Kippur, despite the fact that he stands much higher than the paraduma. Kedushas haguf, kedushas mizbeach. It's a hakrava. No, you don't need a kohen for the shechita because shechita does not have the same value as the other elements of hakrava of that korban. Continues the Gemara. Ulu Shmuel de Amar Pari Psula. Now let's analyze Shmuel's shita. His shita was exactly in the reverse. That the shechita of paraduma does not need a kohen, whereas the shechita of the par kohen gadol needs to be done by the kohen gadol. Ulu Shmuel de Amar Pari Psula. Shmuel holds that the paroi would be possible if done by anyone other than kohen gadol, but not the paraduma. Maishna. Why is there this difference? Maishna paroi dechsiv aron chuka. Why do we insist that a zar does not perform the shechita on the par kohen gadol? Because the Torah speaks about Aaron HaKohen doing the avodas and adds chuka to it to indicate absoluteness. Paranam yoksiv alazar v'chuka. By par as well. Torah says, hand over the paraduma to Lazar, v'shachat oisala fanav, which seems to indicate that he does the shechita, and then we had lashon chuka on the psukim. You can't deviate. So why is Shmuel machshir a zar by shechitas paradum? Shani hasam d'chsiv v'shachat oisala fanav. Says Shmuel, I have a mute. V'shachat oisa lifanav. What does this mean? Not that Aaron does a shechita, not that Elazar does a shechita. Quite the opposite. Shehei zar shoichet. The zar can do the shechita, but Elazar roya. As long as Elazar is observing the process. That's what the pasuk meant. V'shachat, so anybody can do the shechita, even a zar. Lifanav, as long as it's in front of him. So you're right. If not for this miyut, I would equate paraduma to par kohen gadol, to par Yom Kippurim, because in both cases we have a reference to Aaron or to Elazar and chuka to tell you it's unwavering, unyielding. But we have a special miyut. So according to Shmuel, there's no pasuk to tell you that Elazar has to do the shechita. V'shachat oisa lifanav, in his presence. He has to witness the shechita that somebody else can do. Even a zar can do it. So according to Rav, the pasuk is actually telling you that Elazar has to do the shechita. Hand over the par to Elazar. V'shachat oisa lifanav, he'll do the shechita. Shmuel learns differently. V'shachat oisa means anybody can do the shechita. Lifanav, as long as it's in front of him. V'Rav, what does Rav do with the word lifanav? There seems to be an unnecessary word according to Rav. He's doing the shechita lifanav. Elazar does the shechita in front of himself. What does that mean? It's going to tell you, you can't deviate. You can't distract your mind from the task at hand. You have to focus and concentrate on what you're doing to safeguard the paraduma procedure every step along the way. Make sure there's no psul that invalidates the para, any tumah that I come into contact with the para. There's a special stipulation of paraduma, you need to have a shmirah. So lefanav means he'll do the shechita lefanav, fully focusing on the task on hand. Ushmuel shleisiach datu minoli. How does Shmuel know this halacha? That Hesach Hadas will invalidate the para. Because according to him, lefanav is coming to tell you that it's in front of him. The zar does the shechita in front of Elazar. How does he know not to divert your mind? Nafkalim v'saraf as hapar le'enav. I have another pasuk for that. He'll burn the par le'enav. What's le'enav coming to tell you? Fully focused, fully mindful. For Rav. Now we have two psukim according to Rav, teaching you the same thing. V'shachat fanav, focused. V'saraf hapar le'enav, focused again. What's the point of two psukim? Chad b'shchita, one to tell you that the shchita requires kavana. V'chad b'shreifa, one for the shreifa zapar. With shricha, both are needed. The ikas rachmana b'shchita. Had the Torah only spoken about shchita done b'kavana, I would say, yeah, that's unique. Mishum the tchilas avoidei, that initiates the process. The initiation has to be done properly. Avol shreifa emalei, but shreifa zapar, which is the culmination of the process, perhaps once you're on the right track, you're doing it with kavana, with Hesach Hadas, you don't have to keep on focusing and concentrating all the way to the end. Perhaps Sreifa does not need Kavan. Sricha. That's why the pasuk has to repeat and say, yeah, Sreifa cannot be done with Hesach Hadas. Because Rachman is Sreifa. Had the Torah only applied this halacha to Sreifa, I would say, well, that's really important. Mishum da hashta, who the skash for a parah, because at this point, during the burning of the parah, you're enabling it. You're turning it into ashes, which is the objective here, to create the ash. So now you be machshar, you're enabling it for use. So this is the crucial moment of that process. And here, you must focus and concentrate and protect it from any psul. Aval shchita emeloi, but perhaps the shchita, which is all way back, the beginning of the process, so far away from the finish line, emeloi, perhaps Hesach Hadas will not be poisel at that point. Sricha, senior pasuk for both, to tell you shchita cannot have Hesach Hadas, and all the way over to the Sreifa, which must be done mindfully and fully focused. Okay, so in conclusion, we discussed the halacha of shchita. Is shchita kasha b'zar? We discussed par aduma and par Yom Kippur. Rav says, by par aduma, you can't have a zar. Pasuk says, Allah does a shchita v'shachat oisa lefonav, and we have a lashon chukah in the parasha which tells you can't deviate from the requirements. Par Yom Kippur, over there we say a zar can do shchita. Although we have Aaron and chukah in the parasha, that only applies to true avodas. Shchita lav avodah, and therefore can be done by anyone. Oh, if that's the case, then why is the paraduma different? Why is shchita so important by paraduma? The answer is because paraduma is not a carbon. It's by the kabayis. It's simply a procedure that has to be done. Torah says the kohen has to do the procedure. There's no room to differentiate between this part and that part. Therefore, kohen has to be involved from beginning to end. On the other hand, Shmuel holds, although by Par Yom Kippurim it's possible if done by anyone other than kohen gadol, but the pasuk says Aaron and chukah to tell you that you can't deviate. By paraduma it's different. Why can a zar do the shchita? Because the pasuk says you hand the parah over to Elazar, v'shachat oisa lefanav. Somebody else can do the shchita as long as it is lefanav. Torah itself is indicating to us that you don't need Elazar to do the shchita. It's a special miyut, and therefore he holds shchitas paradum bezar is kshera. Continues the Gemara. So you just left off with the concept of hesach hadas. One pasuk by shchita, one pasuk by streifas hapara. Says the Gemara, lemutemai. The fact that the Torah stresses to us, highlights two avodas. Shchita can't be done with hesach hadas. Streifa requires concentration. Why is it that the Torah picked those two things and not didn't reference any other random element of that procedure, somewhere in the middle of the procedure, and say that must be done with concentration? Why did the Torah pick these two things, where each one really has an element of significance, a chashivas to it? The shchita is the tchilas avoda, and the streifa is the time when you're creating the afer. And this leaves room to perhaps speculate and think that hesach hadas is not required. It's not a psul that's applied to all elements of the process. It seems that the Torah is going to remind something. What is the Torah coming to remind? What facet of the paraduma process does not have this restriction, this requirement of focus and concentration? Efra, so it was Efra. Umilu mayim lekiddush. Some have a gersa vikiddush. So before we proceed, just to set things up properly, let's just go through the process of the paraduma. So we have 5 steps which are considered part of the actual production process. You have the shchitas paraduma, kabbalas hadam, the hazoas hadam, although not in the Beis HaMikdash. He's standing on the next mountain, but he's doing the hazah of the dam towards the Beis HaMikdash. That is early in the Masechta, right? He does it al noichach pesach. He does it towards the Heichel. So that's number 3. Then we have the Streifas Hapora, and then he tosses the bundle we discussed yesterday, the Eitz Erez, the Ezav, Eshni Telas, into the fire. These 5 steps are part of the production process. Shchita, the Kabbalah, the Hazah, the Streifa, and the Hashlochas, Eitz Erez, Ve'ezav, Eshni Telas. Then you have 3 additional elements, which are really post-production elements. You have the Asifas Ha'efer, gathering the ashes together. You have the Milui Mayim, taking that kli and filling fresh spring water into it. Then we have the Kiddush, which means basically mixing together the ashes with the water. These things were done post-production. So the paraduma itself has 5 steps, and afterwards you have Asifas Efra, Umilui Mayim, the Kiddush. The Gemara is proposing for us that perhaps this psul of Hesach Hadas only applies to the actual process of the paraduma, the production process. But Asifas Efra, Milu Mayim, and Kiddush, which is post-production, perhaps there's no din of mishmeres, of focusing and concentrating. So we can't say that. L'mishmeres l'menidiksiv. What does that mean? Says Rashi on top. Mishmeres l'menida. Mashma de tzriche shima ad shiyazamem. Shimur is a requirement all throughout, all the way to the end, until you're up to doing the hazah. Apparently applies to gathering of the afer, filling the water, and mixing it with the ashes. You can't be mamait any of these. So what then is the pasuk going to be mamait? Elolim utei ashlachas eitz eres ve'ezoiv u'shnitelas. When it comes to tossing this bundle into the fire, that is not as significant as the other aspects of this production, because the lav the gufa the paranenu. Keep in mind, this isn't the actual paraduma. These are external elements, the piece of wood, the ezoi, the shnitalas, and therefore we choose to be mamaid them from this kavana, from this mishmeres requirement. And therefore, even if it is Hesach Hadas, while he's engaging in the Hashlochas Eitz Erez, it doesn't invalidate the par. Continues the Gemara. Itzmar, let's go back to the task at hand, to the shchita of the paradum. Now the Gemara actually will bring a long brisa which will address various elements within the paraduma procedure, but we're going to really just focus on the halacha of the shchita's paraduma, with which we opened up our sukkah. Itzmar, let's get back to the shaila of shchita's para bezar. Can a zar perform shchita on paradum? Rav Ami Amar Ksheira, Rav Yitzchak Nafchama Psula, Ula Amar Ksheira, Ba'amila, some say Ula said Psula. This is like the Machlokes Rav and Shmuel, where we had Rav said Pasul, and Shmuel said Kash. Masiv Rav Yishua Bar Abba, L'siyul Rav. He brought a right from a brisa in support of Rav, who says what? That the shchita paraduma must be performed by a kohen. The brisa says like this. The brisa will discuss various aspects of the procedure. Who has to do it? When does it have to be done? Is it only an ish or even an isha? Is it only by yom? Could it be done even by laila? Now we know for a fact, that's how we begin the brisa, that hazos mei mea, meaning the actual sprinkling of the mayim of the paraduma, needs to be done strictly by an ish. Pasuk says, "V'taval leishtar," needs to be an ish. Can't be by an isha, and also has to be by yom. Has to take place by day of a pasuk. Yischata boy by yom ashlish. That's a given. Hazos mayim, which is of course after you produce the paraduma. That's the last phase. You take the mayim with the ephah and you spray it on the tummy. That requires an ish and has to be done by day. Says the brisa, "Ainli el hazos meimea." We not only know this regarding the hazah of the mei paraduma, she'en ksher be'isha kebe'ish. That's not kosher to be done by an isha as by an ish. A poetic way of saying that an isha is possible. Ve'en ksher el b'yoyim, and it's only kosher by day. That's a given. Minayin l'rabbis, what about the other stages of production? Minayin l'rabbis, shchitasa. The Kabbalah's Dama, Vazah's Dama, Usreifasa, V'ashlochas eitz erez ve'ezoi v'shnitelas. What about those 5 steps? 5 steps of production. Do they need to be done by day only? Or can they be done even at night? Now we know for a fact, as far as the Isha element, that's Pasha, that an Isha is puzzle. Rashi points out that throughout the Parsha, we have mentionings of Elazar, of Kohen, with reference to these elements of the procedure process. Meaning, you can't produce the paraduma using anybody except for the Ish. That's Pasha. The question is, as far as timing, should we equate these facets of the paraduma to the Hazos Mayim? Again, Hazos Mayim, meaning taking the May paraduma after we finish the procedure, spraying it on a tummy. That can only be done by an Ish and by day. We're not producing the paraduma. These 5 steps, which we know for a fact, can only be done by an Ish. But is Yoim required? Talmud Loimar Torah. Pasuk says, Zois Chukas HaTorah. Torah is an inclusive term, an all-encompassing term. It's going to be marred by other things as well. Just as the Hazor of the Mayim is Dafka B'Yoim, likewise all these aspects as well. Only B'Yoim, not B'Layla. Yochel Shani Marba. Perhaps I'll include the post-production procedure as well. Yochel Shani Marba, Afasifas Efer, gathering of the ashes. Umil Mayim, filling of the water. B'Kiddush, mixing the Mayim with the Efer. Perhaps they as well need to be done by day only. Tamalim is Zois. It says, Zois, Chukas HaTorah. Zois is a miyut. Which tells you, don't extend this requirement any further. On the one hand, we have Torahs, which is a ribui, to include other elements as well, into this requirement of Yoim. We have Zois to be Mamayit. We choose to be Mamayit these 3 elements, post-production elements. They don't need to be done by day. Umay Rois. Now, what right do you have to say this? What did you see? On which basis are you building this distinction? The Rabbi says Elu to include these. Although he says Elu to exclude those. You're including all these elements within the production process, and you're excluding all the post-production elements. Says the Gemara, Achar sheriba kos. Since we find that the pasuk was marba. On the one hand, we find an inclusive term, Torahs. On the other hand, we have an exclusive term, a miyut, Zois, Amris. Let's sit down and analyze. Rashi has a beautiful lashon here. If you want to see it inside, it'll be around 3-4 lines from our position in the Gemara. Rashi begins with Achar. Achar sheriba kos of a miyut. We have a paradox. We have a riba and a miyut, which seem to be incompatible. For like Pirush, my riba ma'amir, Torah didn't specify what to apply the riba to and what to apply the miyut to. Me'ata. So now we're stuck. What do we do? Apparently Torah is giving it to us, allowing us to focus, to concentrate, to analyze. Figure out the true and just way. I had a friend who once said, the Torah never takes you, Hashem never takes you all the way to the finish line. He puts you on the right track, the rest is up to you. So the Lashon Rashi is like a Musar. The Torah sets the guidelines, sets the stage, and expects you to continue. Beautiful Lashon. Okay, getting back to the Gemara. So we have a Riboy, Torahs, and we have a Miyut, Zois. So let's figure things out. Let's draw a parallel and derive from the prime example. What sets the standard, the benchmark? What's the clear-cut halacha? Hazos Mayim. Taking the May Paraduman, doing Hazor on the Tameh, for which the Torah says only Ish is kosher and only B'Yom is kosher. So we draw a connection. Ma Hazor Asmemeh. Ein Ksherin B'Isha K'B'ish. Just as that process is not kosher by an Isha, only an Ish can do it, and therefore we see another restriction. Ve'en Ksherin al B'Yom. Likewise, can only be done B'Yom. So we connect the two things. We say anything that has restriction number 1 will have restriction number 2. They go hand in hand. Afani Avish Chetasa will compare to Hazos Mayim will equate the other aspects of the production process. Shchitasa, Bekabalos Dama, Vazos Dama, Ushrei Fasa, Vashlachas, Eitz Erez, Ve'ezav Shnitelas. All these that are involved in the production of the paraduma, since we find within them some similarity to Hazos Mayim, Hoyel Ve'en Ksherin Be'isha Kebe'ish. They can't be done by an Isha, as Rashi explained, because we have a Lazar, we have Kain mentioned throughout the parsha. That's a given. Only an Isha's kasha, and therefore we say they have the Yoim limitation as well. So we find that the Ish requirement is synonymous and goes together with the Yoim requirement. Again, just as Hazos Mayim, since it's only kasha be'ish, it also has the other restriction. It's only kasha be'yoim. Likewise, when we find that Torah is going to include others and say that the yoim specification applies to other things as well, what are we going to choose? Answer is anything that's similar to Hazos Mayim, anything which contains an element which is equal to Hazos Mayim, i.e., can only be done by an ish, such as the shchita, kabbalah, etc. And since they have the ish requirement, we assume the yoim specification goes along as well, and therefore we include them into this framework. But now I'm at liberty to be mamait other things. Asivas Ephra, these post-production activities, gathering of the Ephra, umilu mayim, filling up the klicheres with the mayim chaim, the kiddush, and mixing together the Ephra with the water. Why am I going to be mamait these things? Why am I going to say these things can be done at night? You know why? Because they're lacking the ish restriction. They're totally dissimilar to Hazos Mayim. Since they can be done by an isha just as much as by an ish, there's no din that these things need an ish. So since they're lacking that requirement, we assume this is what the Torah meant when the Torah said zois, exclude some things, and we say ksherin nami b'yoyim b'layla, they can be done by day or night. So this was the brisa. End quote. How does this pertain to us, to our sugya of shchitas paraduma? So we'll take out one element from this brisa. The fact is, the brisa tells us that shchitas paraduma can only be performed by an ish, and this will be a right to Rav, just as you need an ish, you need a kain, and a kasha to Shmuel. Says the Rabbi, my tiyufta, 1 second. What's the kasha from the brisa? What do you see a stira to Shmuel who allows a zar? You haven't found a brisa that tells us anything else. Is it that you're suggesting to me, since we find the brisa tells us that the paraduma has to be done by an ish? It's pretty clear in the brisa. So you expand that further, and you'll say psul nami bizar. Just as you need an ish, you need a kayin, and that'll be the right to Rav. On what basis are you making that assumption? Ish means no zar. I'll find you a case where an ish is very much a requirement, but a zar can do it. Hazar sme'me'atachich. I bring a raya from the Nazar of the Mei Paradum on the Tomei. Shepsum b'isha, although an isha is possible for that, as we just concluded. Uksherim b'zar, of course, you don't need a kayan to be matar the Tomei. Even a zar, Yisrael can take the Ephra Paraduma, do the Hazar on a Tomei. Two things aren't necessarily connected, related to each other. So what's the kasha on Shmuel? Sure, an ish has to do the shchita. But it could be a zar who says you need a kain. Amar Abaye Haine Tiyufte. This is what he meant to say. On what basis did the brisa conclude that only an ish, only a zach, can do the shchitas paraduma? Because of that pasuk. Pasuk that said, you hand the parah to Elazar, v'shachat oisa lafanav. We have no other raya in the parsha that an ish is needed for the shchitas parah. It's only that pasuk. In fact, the brisa insists on an ish doing the shchitas parah. Evidently, the brisa is learning the pasuk like Rav, who said that v'shachat oisa lafanav is referring to Elazar. he does the shchita. That's why only an ish is kosher. And only a kohen is kosher. They go hand in hand. But Lazar's doing it, he's an ish, and he's a kohen. And it's a kasha on Shmuel. Again, the fact that the Brisa insists on an ish performing the shchita lepara, that's indicative of Rav's pshat in the pasuk. V'shachat oisel lefana means Lazar does the shchita. An ish and a kohen, not a zar. Because remember, Shmuel learned the pasuk differently. He said, "V'shachat oisel lefana." It's not referring to Lazar doing the shchita. Anybody can do the shchita lefanav, as long as it's in the presence of a Lazar. But the Brisa here clearly learns differently. V'shachat oisel lefana means that Lazar does the shchita. Only an ish can do it, and only the kohen. So again, Amar Abaye hired to Yufte. This was what Rabbi Shua bar Abba meant to ask from this Brisa. Isha my time. Why does the Brisa disqualify the Isha for shchitas par a Lazar, v'lo Isha? Pasuk says a Lazar does a shchita, not an Isha. V'shachat oisel lefanav. A Lazar does a shchita. Zar nami. A Lazar v'lo zar. By the same token, will disqualify a zar. It's a Lazar that does it, and not a zar. This was what he meant when he said, I have a kasha from this Brisa on Shmuel. This Brisa clearly follows Rav's sheet. Shchitas paraduma has to be done by a kohen. So, conclusion. Let's go down the list of the various stages in the paraduma production, and we'll figure out whether you need an ish, whether it has to be done b'yayim, and whether you even need a kohen, or perhaps a zar is kosher. Let's start with the most simple aspect, the hazoras mayim, which is actually at the end. You take the finished product and you do the hazah on the tummy. Pasuk clearly says an ish has to do it. The tavel ishtar has to be tavel the ezav in that water. B'yayim as well. Who is chata b'yayim ashlishi. But as we just concluded, you don't need a kohen for that. Even a zar can do the hazoras mayim on the tummy. Let's proceed to the production process of the paradum, which is really split into two categories. We have the 5 steps of the actual production: shchitas para, kabbalas dam, hazoras adam, streifas para, and hashlachas eitz erez, and ezav and shitelas. An ish is certainly required. The pasuk speaks about Aaron, so speaks about a kohen doing these things. And as a result of that ish requirement, we draw a parallel. We say, when you need ish, you need it to be done by yom, just as the hazos mayim. Since it needs an ish, it needs to be by yom, and of course this is included in the riboy of those toiras. This chukas ha-toira. Torah is a riboy to be marred by all these activities as well, since ish is a requirement, yom is a requirement as well. Now regarding zar, that depends. All the facets of the production system needs a kohen. As opposed to shchita, we have machlekes. Rav says, of course, it's part of the process. You need a kohen. Shmuel says no. Shchita is different. Why? Because it's a miyut. Pasuk says, "V'shachat oisel lefanav." Somebody else can do the shchita as long as it's in the presence of the kohen. Let's move down to the next category: post-production activities. Asifas of the efer, milui mayim and kiddush. Here, there's no din of ish. We don't find that the pasuk needs an ish, and as a result, we say they're excluded from the yoim requirement as well. Because remember, we had a miyut zois chukas haTorah, and we apply it to these things. Regarding a zar, it's pasha that these things can be done by a zar just as much as by a kohen. Continues the Gemara. Omar ul kol parsha kula. If you take a close look at the parsha paraduma, you find an interesting phenomenon. You find several diyukim, inferences, which at times seem to be consistent with each other, going in harmony on the same track. And sometimes they're on different tracks. They're not consistent with each other. Kol parsha kula mashma. You have a mashmois, an indication, which is moitzi miad mashma, which is usurping and undoing the previous indication. Umashma memela. Sometimes you have that the mashmoyos, the inferences, the indications, go hand in hand and follow the same track. We will elaborate on this in greater detail in the upcoming Amud. So what he means to say is like this. If you bring a doctor in the psukim, sometimes the diyukim go hand in hand. That a requirement indicated in one pasuk continues on in the next pasuk, and sometimes you suddenly change tracks. The requirements are different, and suddenly changed on you. Let's begin. The pasuk says, "You take the para unisatem oisa el lozer akoyin." We have a diyuk here. Oisa. You give this thing to a lozer. What's the halacha here? Oisa el lozer. Only this first paraduma done in the midbar was meant to be done by a lozer akoyin who was a skan kohen gadol. He wasn't a kohen hedjit. He wasn't a kohen gadol. He was a skan, somewhere in the middle, a backup kohen gadol, a vice kohen gadol. The Torah insists that he takes care of the paraduma, the one in the midbar. V'lo l'deres la'lozer. The miyut of Oisa tells you only this one had to be tended to by a lozer, but l'deres reality, deres, a lozer does not have to be involved. You don't need a skan kohen gadol. Now, you can go either way. Meaning, who will take care of the paraduma throughout the deres? Not a lozer. But you go up, meaning does the kohen gadol have to do it from now on, or do you go down? And a simple kohen hedjit can do it. Throughout the generations, the kohen gadol was the one who needed to do the paraduma. So now it's a lozer, but later on, you need to upgrade to a kohen gadol. Some maintain, no, the deres be kohen hedjit. Throughout the deres, even a kohen hedjit can do the paraduma. So now it was a lozer, but later on, it's kasha be kohen hedjit. Interesting, Tishanim points out, the Tishanim is actually back on Beis Amud Aleph. He says, even if you hold that Afidin, a kohen hedjit, can do the paraduma throughout the deres, Lamaisa, it was the Kohanim Gedolim. He says, Hayu oisem Kohanim Gedolim. Kedisnan, we find in the Mishnah, Shimon HaTzadik was a Kohen Gadol, we learned that the other day. He was a Kohen Gadol for 40 years. He actually did 2 paradumas in his lifetime, which was very unusual. Farshim say there was lots of Muhammad's going there, and there were lots of Tmei Mesim, and there was a great need for the paraduma water, so he made 2. And the Shon continues, likewise, all the other ones who did the paradumas were Kohanim Gedolim, even though perhaps it doesn't need a Kohen Gadol. The fact is, they took care of it. As we find a full list of the Kohanim Gedolim who did the paradumos in Mesachas Parah Peragim Mishnehei, v'zeh hayok kvoidam, and this was a covet for him, an honor. So even though perhaps a Kohen Gadol was not required, but the fact is, Kohen Gadol took charge and he took care of the paraduma. In fact, if you remember with Mesachas Shkolim, we learned that the Kohen Gadol, the Kohanim Gedolim would build their own ramps to be machaber themselves. It seems from the Gemara that indeed the Kohanim Gedolim were the ones who were very much involved in the paraduma procedure. Continues the Gemara. So we have machlokes. What happened throughout the deres? Do we insist on a Kohen Gadol, or is a Kohen Hedjot enough? We understand that shita. That throughout the deres the Kohen Hedjot was enough. Why not? A lozer was needed in the midbar, but only a Isach lozer. Going forward, you don't need that much. You downgrade to even a Kohen Hedjot. Elo lemanda amar l'deres b'Kohen Gadol. Minoli. How do we understand the other shita who insists that throughout the deres we need a Kohen Gadol? What right do you have to be machmer, to upgrade? What's the raya? Maybe a Kohen Hedjot is enough. Gomar chuka chuka Yom Kippurim. We draw a parallel. Exer Shava chuka from Yom Kippur. Just as by Yom Kippur, with the word chukah, the term chukah, those chukas, as mentioned, chukah soilam, and the Kohen Gadol is needed for the avodas Yom Kippur. Likewise, when it comes to paraduma, where we have a term chukah, those chukas Torah, Kohen Gadol is the one to do the paraduma. Let's move on to the next diuk. Let's continue. V'hoitzi oisa, pasuk says, he carries out, takes out, he walks out the paraduma over to Har Mishcha. Oisa is a meat, which teaches us shelo yoytzi acheres ima. The paraduma must go on its own. You can't bring another one. You can't. It can't be accompanied by another behemoth. Because it's none. Suppose the para refused to leave. You can't bring another one, a black para, to keep it company which will perhaps coax it on its way. No. In order not to create the impression that they shechted the black one instead of the red one. Likewise, you can't even bring another paraduma to keep it company, to encourage it to go out, so as not to create an impression that he shechted two paradumas, which is a problem. Rashi says, we're from a pasuk, you can't do two at once. So that's why we don't have it accompanied by any other behem. That's not the reason. Shem means the basis. This is not the tam, the reason for this halacha, to avoid false impressions. Has to go out on its own. You can't have another animal keeping it company. Why does Tanakama have to trouble himself to present a tam? People shouldn't say the pasuk. There's a kasef. Answers the Gemara. Man Tanakama, Reb Shimoni. Actually, Tanakama is Reb Shimon, who throughout Shas presents the tam of the halacha and incorporates it into the context of the halacha. Reb Shimoni, the Dorish time of the Kra, he's Dorish the tam of the halacha and gets the tam involved in the equation. Meaning, when the Torah presents a halacha and Reb Shimon presents the tam that goes along with it, then what happens is, when there's no tam applied, when the tam is not relevant, the halacha doesn't apply either. That's Reb Shimon's shit. And he's a Tanakama now in our Mishnah. Indeed, it's a pasuk. It must go out on its own. You can't have another para accompany it. But what's the tam? Reb Shimon tells us the tam is to avoid false impressions. He's shechting another one with it, etc. And the nafkamina will be, as we'll see in a second, suppose the tam, the reason, is irrelevant, doesn't apply. In that case, the halacha won't apply either. My binayu, what difference does it make whether you're presenting a reason or not? The difference will be the apik chamer bada. Can you go ahead and have a donkey accompany the paradum on its way out? So if it's exeres hakasav ha'itiyisa without a reason given, even a chamar is a problem. It has to come out on its own. But according to Reb Shimon, that the basis for this halacha is shelo yaimu, to avoid any impression that you're shechting another one with a chamor. Nobody's going to think that he's preparing it for shechita. In that case, there's no concern. The pasuk continues, v'shachad oisa. He has to do the shechita on the par itself. Oisa is a meat. Shelo yishchot acher sima. As we just mentioned, you can't even take a long knife and do a double shechita on the par and another one at the same time. And finally, lefanav. This is the pasuk which we discussed many times throughout the daf. V'shachad oisa lefanav. What's lefanav coming to tell you? Well, it depends. L'rav shlei siach da'at mimena. It's coming to tell you that Elazar, the kohen who does the shechita, according to Rav, the kohen has to do the shechita of the paraduma, has to be lefanav, in front of him, focused, fully concentrating on the task at hand. Whereas according to Shmuel, the Shmuel, the shachat lefanav means something entirely different. That anybody can do the shechita as long as it's in the presence of Aaron. It's going to teach us lefanav means sheizar sheichet. Even a zar can do the shechita. Ve'elazar raya, in the presence of Elazar. So this is the basis of Shmuel's halacha, that a zar can do the shechita of the paraduma. V'shachad oisa, anybody can do the shechita as long as it's lefanav, in front of Elazar. Okay, time for brief chazorah of today's daf. Can a zar perform the shechita? Says Rav, by paraduma, no. The entire process needs a kohen, as opposed to Pariyim and Kippurim. We differentiate between the carbon-related avodas, which require a kohen gadol, as opposed to shechita, which is lav avodah, and even a zar is kosher for that. Shmuel holds just the opposite. Yom Kippur, the entire seder, needs a kohen gadol, even shechita, as opposed to paraduma. A zar is kosher. We have a pasuk, v'shachat oisa. Anybody does the shechita, as long as it's lefanav, in the presence of Elazar kohen. We learned that hesach hadas is a paisel all throughout the paraduma procedure, except by ashlachas eitz erez ve'ezav into the fire, which is not considered migufa de para. We learned that the elements of production of the paraduma are required to be done by an ish and by yom, as opposed to post-production elements, asifas efer, etc., can be done even by an isha or balayla, who perform the paraduma procedure after Elazar's time. Some say a kohen hedyot, some say we insist on a kohen gadol, and we learned v'hoitzia isach levado and v'shachal isach levado. Hatzlacha Rabbi.